All right, welcome back to First Team Fantasy, and we are going to be going over one of the last Sunday morning games. We had the Texans going into Carolina, and it was not a very good game. Panthers ended up winning their first game of the year, 15-13, and it was a pretty bad all around game for the Texans. They weren't really able to move the ball. CJ Stroud was 16 of 24 for 140 yards, ran the ball twice for 13 yards and a touchdown, finished with 12.9 fantasy points. And it's a bit disappointing because I thought this would be a good week for him. I mean, coming off the bye, and it's not a very good look. I'm hoping that he could bounce back this upcoming week, but I mean, it was Tank Dell's first game back. They didn't have Robert Woods, but it was just not a good game for the Texans all around. I mean, Dameon Pierce against probably the worst rush defense. Well, it was statistically the worst rush defense in the NFL. Dameon Pierce had 12 attempts for 46 yards, got nothing through the air. Devin Singletary had 10 attempts for 30 yards, 2 catches for 13, which put him above Pierce in fantasy points, 6.3 to Pierce's 4.6. Pierce played 43% of the snaps, 25, and Devin Singletary played 40% of the snaps at 23. So we very much have something like what we have in Baltimore, except the Houston Texans probably aren't going to score as much as the Ravens over the course of the year. They're probably not going to have as many goal line opportunities, so on and so forth. I mean, I guess Singletary is a decent option just due to the pass catching, if that's going to be his role, and they're going to, be within like 2 carries of each other. If one guy's going to catch passes and the other isn't at all, I'm not saying that's going to be something that continues. Like I said, coming into this week, it's something that we're probably going to have to watch for a couple weeks. But if you want to pick up Devin Singletary, he's out on the waivers. I mean, it's an option.
Yeah.
But very poor performances against a very awful rush defense. So, like, the way I'm looking at it is I'm just not too excited about either of these options moving forward. But if you need one, the way it looks, there's going to be volume and they're not going to burn you, but they're not going to do anything in the way of winning you a week.
Yeah.
Dalton Schultz had a very disappointing day. Got 5 targets, but only caught 2 of them, 5 yards, 2.5 fantasy points. He played 78% of the snaps, so he's out there. I mean, the return of Tank Dell could very well have had a lot to do with his targets, but he still did get 5. It was just a matter of, him catching them or them being good targets. Nico Collins had a disappointing week as well. He played 72% of the snaps, but had 6 targets, got 4 of them for 30 yards. I mean, just seeing that CJ Stroud passed for 140, you can probably figure that no one had too great of a day. Tank Dell only caught 3 of his 4 targets for 16 yards, ran the ball 3 times for 15, so he finished with 6.1 fantasy points. Another fairly disappointing week. Robert Woods didn't play, so Noah Brown stepped in his position, caught 3 of his 5 targets for 57 yards, making him the leading receiver for the Texans on the week. And he finished with 8.7 fantasy points, played 72% of the snaps, just like Nico Collins. And John Mechie, I mean, he's not even a fantasy option at this point. He's getting outsnapped by Noah Brown, and I don't know. It's sad. He was a really exciting prospect coming into the year. Last year, obviously, was dealing with the medical issue and just hasn't been able to kind of come back to what we had hoped he would be. But that's really all for the Texans side of the ball. The only touchdown they scored was CJ Stroud rushing. So,
Yeah. I'm not crazy concerned. Like Nico Collins and Tank Dell, I still like them fantasy wise. my huge concern is Dameon Pierce. We've seen, and
Yeah.
I'm not wishing this upon him by any means, but we saw, like a James Robinson have two very good seasons, suffer a significant injury, and just kind of never be the same. And Dameon Pierce last season was rushing not crazy efficient, but I mean 4.27 yards a carry. He's averaging 3 yards a carry this year. That is what I look at and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. And he's gotten volume. He's only broken double digits twice. One of those games he only broke it because he got a touchdown. And the other one he rushed 24 times for 81 yards. So it's like, that's 3.38 yards a carry. Dameon Pierce is a guy where, yeah, I like Devin Singletary because we've seen him have success in the league. And Dameon Pierce, I mean, he looked really good last year, but it's just, he got drafted in the
Senior
seventh
year.
round of our fantasy league, and probably a lot of people's seventh, eighth round. And realistically, he might, if he keeps playing like this, he probably won't have a starting job next season. It's just been terrible.
I mean, it kind of depends on where he ends up, if he stays on Houston or not, if they end up bolstering their offensive line, because we know that's been terrible this year, and they just haven't had any real success running the ball at all. That's why we've seen CJ Stroud with the big passing numbers for the most part. This was very disappointing this week. I mean, you're hoping better's like to come. There's more like good weeks on the way. But yeah, this one you look at and you can't necessarily just write it off. It is concerning, but it's like, you still take out of it that Nico Collins is the wide receiver one. He did lead the team in targets.
Yeah.
Noah Brown ended up doing the most with his targets, but I don't know if that's sustainable on a week-to-week basis. Tank Dell should ramp up. He's coming off of being out for 2 weeks, and I think he should do better. I mean, overall, I'd like to hope this offense produces more. The running game is the concern. So it's like, I don't know if I'm necessarily dropping Dameon Pierce.
No, but you
But I'm
can't
not.
trade him because you won't get anything.
No, yeah, you can't really trade him, and starting him is very difficult at this point.
Yeah.
Same goes with Singletary. Like, he's a good insurance back, but that's really about it at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving on to the Panther side of the ball, you saw a little bit more positivity with certain players. Bryce Young was 22 for 31, 235 yards, a touchdown, 4 rushing attempts for 11 yards, finished with 14.5 fantasy points. I mean, we weren't really looking at starting him as a fantasy option anyways, but as far as his finishes on the year, that is one of the better ones. And just real football-wise as well. Like, that is one of his better finishes. And they won the game, so good job, Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Miles Sanders, on the other hand, played 18% of snaps, which was only 12. Ran the ball 2 times for 0 yards. Did not get a target in the passing game. I don't know if this is like something like in how with Miami, we saw with them when guys come off of the injury or come off of a injury, they'll tend to like ease them in, only
Yeah.
give them a couple carries, or only, we saw with Jerome Ford this week, he wasn't necessarily fully healthy, so they really only put him in the fourth quarter. Things like that. It could have been something like that, but we have also seen Chuba Hubbard be more efficient on the ground and just more, useful in the pass game as well.
Yeah.
So it very well could be a changing of the running backs in the favor of Chuba Hubbard. But at the same time, something we talked about is they did pay Miles Sanders a decent amount for a running back, at least, to come to Carolina and play. I mean, it's definitely a cause for concern. I don't know if I'm like Dameon Pierce. I don't know if I'm dropping Miles Sanders, but at the same time, he's not startable at this point.
No.
I'd prefer to start Chuba until I see any sort of change. And I don't know if I will. I mean, Chuba's been good for them. This week, he was very inefficient on the ground, but He also caught 2 passes for 26 yards on 2 targets. He was 15 for 28. Absolutely horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't able to run the ball at all anyways. Like Miles Sanders had 2 attempts for 0 yards as well.
Yeah.
So nothing to add to that. The Panthers tight ends, Hayden Hurst played 33% of the snaps, got nothing. Tommy Tremble played 54%. So, I mean, we know he's the kind of the tight end one in Carolina, but that equated to 2 catches on 3 targets for 4 yards and a touchdown, which happened to win the Panthers the game. But I mean, like
Not looking at him.
we've seen things like this from Hunter Henry, from Hayden Hurst, the guy on the same team. And we don't care about guys like this who happen to score touchdowns. You know, if you put them on a DFS lineup or something, that's great, but that is not sustainable. And I'm not looking towards that. Something that I think that is sustainable and I am more excited about is Jonathan Mingo. Before the bye, he had a fairly efficient game, and then coming out of it, he played 99% of the snaps, caught 4 of his 5 passes for 62 yards, giving him 10.2 PPR points. And as far as, you know, guys on the waiver that I'm interested in, this is definitely one of them. It's a rookie wide receiver that they drafted with Bryce Young. So as they're kind of like growing together. And I mean, Adam Thielen has been doing great, but Adam Thielen isn't the future of the Carolina Panthers. They're going to start working in Jonathan Mingo a lot more. While Thielen might remain the number 1 target for the rest of the year, I think that Mingo can be a solid number 2. And while, you know, you want to say we don't like the number 2 guys on teams like the Carolina Panthers, they haven't been able to run the ball well. So if Bryce Young is able, and we've seen Bryce Young have a lot of success in college. Yes, we've seen Zach Wilson have a lot of success in college, but it just means it's there. It's possible. And he showed a little bit of it this week. And if he's able to, you know, for a guy like Mingo, if he could get like 5 or 6 targets and catch 4 or 5 of them every week and get around 50, 60 yards, get in the end zone sometime, that is a solid wide receiver 3 flex option, especially in times where guys are getting hurt. We're coming up on a lot of buys. I mean, the only week of no buys is gone.
Yeah.
So, except for May, no, unless week 12.
Week 12, yeah. I was thinking that. I don't think week 12 has, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Week 12 is the only other one. But, you know, we still have a few weeks to go till then. So, and all those weeks in between, there's going, like, for example, this week we'll get to it on the waiver show, but we have San Francisco, Jacksonville, Detroit, and Denver all in bye.
A lot of weapons.
There's definitely receivers on those teams. So, yeah, a guy like Jonathan Mingo, and we'll talk about that in the waiver episode too, is worth picking up. He's out there 99% of the time. The other guy, DJ Chark, only out there 93%. So it seems like they're moving towards Mingo definitely being their wide receiver 2 for this year. In the future, probably the wide receiver 1. But Chark finished with 2 catches on 4 targets for 23 yards. Like I said, it's kind of obvious which direction this is moving in. And then Adam Thielen, another great day. 8 catches on 11 targets, 72 yards, 15.2 points. And that kind of feels like a down day for him, which is crazy. But yeah, he's been great this year. And that's really all I got for this game.
Yeah, I don't even have too much to add. It's, you know, Miles Sanders had 18 carries and then 14 his first 2 weeks. And then since then, 9, 13, 7, 2 this week. This isn't the same Miles Sanders as in Philadelphia.
No.
That's really all I had. We know what we get from Thielen, and I agree. Mingo's the number 2 there, and he's going to increase as the season goes on.
Yeah, 13-15 game. I mean, yeah. There were not a lot of exciting games. There were some good ones, but for the most part,
yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And It may or may not get worse, guys. But that'll be it for this one. Wow. Yeah, hopefully we see better weeks out of the Houston Texans. And we have one more morning game. And then our next episode after that will cover all of the afternoon games. Or did you want to do those individually?
We can do that.
We'll decide that after.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just throw them all in one and get that over with. So yeah, we'll have all the afternoon games, Sunday night game, Monday night game, and the waivers.
Yep.
So it'll be a pretty packed episode. One more morning game before that. Stay tuned, guys. Like we say every time, thank you for the support. Any questions, comments you may have, leave them below. And
take more reps with the first team. We'll see you
Yes.
next time.
That